Greetings, Rob McCrae here, erstwhile known as Clan McCrae 9. And in this video we're going to be taking a look at some of the new features for the Imperium Romanum 2 Vassal module. We're up to version 2.3 now. So the first thing I want to show you is I've added some little icons here. As you can see down here at the bottom, there are some enhancements here that we will go over in a second. But I wanted to show you that I added these little mouse icons here. And these identify on your map which of these numerical counters you can access with your mouse and which ones you cannot. So if you can access them with your mouse, then you can basically go in, change the numbers by left clicking on it using the up and down arrow as such. Whereas the numbers that do not have the mouses over them, you cannot select them. They're going to calculate and they're going to display the resulting number based on the changes that you make in the counters that you can change. So what is this all about? So in the game Imperium Romanum 2, one of the important factors is that each unit gets a combat point value. And the stacks in this game can get pretty tall, and so you can count them up. It's not the most difficult thing in the world, but I thought it'd be really neat to simplify it, and along with the combat ratio tool here, assist the players in being able to quickly and accurately and openly simulate the combat that's taking place on the board. So the way this works is I'm going to take this stack here of Romans who are led by one of my favorite Roman emperor names, Pupienus, and I'm going to put the purple on the attacker stack and the blue on the defender stack. The defenders are led by the also unfortunately named Emperor Posthumus. I'll clear my movement trails. Actually, I'll leave them on so we can refer to the map here. So as you can see, when I put them on the counters here, or when I put them onto the squares, nothing happens at first. So what you have to do is you have to access this button up here, so a new button in the menu control. And when I click it, it's going to take a few seconds. Some of the calculations in Vassal take a surprisingly long amount of time, so there it popped up. So as you can see, the attacker has 202 combat points, and Posthumus, the defender, has 116. So trying to determine what those odds are, or rather what the ratio is for that attack, isn't so difficult when you're dealing with even numbers like 1 to 1, 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1. But there are also, let me bring up the chart, on the land combat results table, you have this set of ratios that you can fit the combat into. So you have 1 to 3, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 4 to 5, 1 to 1, 5 to 4, 3 to 2, 2 to 1, 3 to 1, and 4 to 1. And again, the 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1, 1 to 1, 1 to 2, 1 to 3, you can pretty much eyeball those and figure out where those are. The 2 to 3, the 4 to 5, 5 to 4, 3 to 2 are a little bit more difficult to just look at two sets of numbers and know exactly where they fit. So this combat ratio tool is going to help you out here. So the way you do that is you look at your combat points for the attacker, and you look at this number here. And this number will tell you whether or not you can meet this particular combat ratio. Now, as the attacker, you're going to always want to achieve the highest combat ratio to move the chart to the right. The attacker, you always want to be over in this column, and the defender, you always want to be over in this column. So the combat ratio tool is telling us that the attacker must have 116 points to meet 1-to-1. Well, clearly that is the case with 202. So let's see if the attacker has enough combat points to reach 2-to-1. So the calculator or the ratio tool is telling us 232. So the attacker does not have enough to reach the 2-to-1 column. But in between 1-to-1, there are two other columns here that the attacker might be able to meet, 5-to-4 and 3-to-2. So obviously the attacker would want to be in the 3-to-2 column instead of the 5-to-4, but let's see what his best ratio is. So let's look at 5-to-4 first, since it's the next one to the right, and let's see if he has enough numbers in his combat points for that. So 145 are needed by the attacker, and the attacker does have 202. So the attacker could move over to the 5-to-4 column. But as we said, he would prefer to be in the 3-to-2. So let's see if he has enough combat points to meet that. And it looks like the attacker does. The attacker needs 174 and has 202. So you can kind of see there, you can play around with the ratio tool here and see what your best combat odds are here, or combat ratio is here for the attack. Okay, so that's basically how that works. There are a few more tricks here that you need to know though. So if you notice here, I left the movement trails up here so we could refer back to this. So Hispalis is where Pupienus was, and Posthumus is where was on Gadus. And there's a river in between. So that's going to be a modifier for the combat. So if we were actually playing the game, we would need to modify the combat attack points. So the first modifier here is if the defender is being besieged. And that might be the case as well, because Posthumus is in a city. But we're going to ignore that one for a minute. And let's look at the second one, which is what I call the water modifier. And it's basically if the attacker is attacking across a river, you would increase that up to 2, and that doubles the defender's combat points. So now suddenly Pupienus is in trouble of being able to successfully win this combat. And so we're going to have to change our ratio here based on that reality. So now, with 3-to-2 odds, the combat ratio tool is telling us that we need 174 points, which Pupienus does not have. So let's try 5-to-4 again, see if he at least still has that. And he needs 145 and does not have that. So that's going to bring us back down to 1-to-1. Again, we're just working our way down the ratio numbers. So if he doesn't meet 1-to-1, we would have to go down to 4-to-5. And he does not meet 1-to-1. So we're going to have to go down to 4-to-5, and the attacker is hoping he at least meets that. And yes, so now he only needs 92 to meet 4-to-5. And that would be a pretty dubious attack. But depending where you are in the game, that would be a judgment call whether or not you wanted to move forward with that 4-to-5 attack. Okay, so now let's take a look at naval combat points. Actually, one more thing that I want to show you here. So Possum stack, you can see I have a fortress stacked with him, and that's 5 defensive combat points. There's 2 ways that you can do the combat points. You can bring the fortress with the stack and add it in there, or you could leave the fortress on the hex and add it to this modifier, which is for cities, ports, and fortifications. So I could add the 5 there to the stack, and it would give us the same number. So again, there are 3 modifiers. If the defender is being besieged, for crossing a river, narrow sea hex, or in a river hex during a flood. And then any defense points that are intrinsic to that hex for cities, ports, and fortifications. And let me make sure I have that down. So I'm going to bring that back to 1. I'll bring this back to 0. And we're going to move our land combat stacks back to where they were. And let's see how naval combat point calculations work. Bring this back to 1 to 1. Okay, so we're going to call this stack our attacker, and we're going to call this stack our defender. Now, naval combat is a little bit different because, for one thing, I'll point out that I probably have too many units stacked here for the transport, but let's ignore that for right now. It looks like a lot of units for that, but there are 3 ships there, so maybe, but that would be something you would have to look at when you're moving troops with your ships. So the thing that I want to show you here is that when you're doing naval combat, you have to separate the stacks out. So obviously the ships are going to stay here. You would need to pull out your cavalry because you do not get any combat points for cavalry on ships because obviously they're useless. I have 1 more cavalry there. And our heavy infantry, you're going to pull out and put into that square. So now let's do the same thing over here. Let's take our cavalry out. Let's put our heavy infantry here. And now we can calculate. But before we do, I wanted to show one other thing. Notice how I have this guy, he's flipped to his weaker side. And that's fine. The calculator is going to take that into consideration. So let's go ahead and hit our calculator button again, and it's going to reset. Take about 6 seconds, and this naval battle has 174 to 50. And you can see that what it's going to do is it's going to take the value of this stack at full combat point value, and it's going to give you half value for your heavy infantry. And the same thing on the defender side. So let's see if we can work out our odds here, our ratio. Looks like we can get all the way to 3 to 1. Obviously we don't need to check for 3 to 2 because 3 to 1 is better. And we'll look at 4 to 1 just to make sure it does not reach 4 to 1. So again, that's basically how the combat calculator and the combat ratio tool work. I find it kind of a fun way to do the combat and to toy around with it to see what my bets are, odds are using the available ratios, because I certainly can't do it in my head just from looking at it and guesstimating. And then finally, the last thing that I want to show you is the stacking points. So when your stacks are out here in these hexes, they're always being measured against the terrain value to see whether or not your units can forage or how they're going to survive based on their stacking point value. And it's real simple. You're just going to bring your stack over here, and just like with the combat calculator, you're going to click on this button for the stacking points, and it's going to give you your number. So this stack has 39 stacking points, and I think that's going to help out when you're trying to look at all of your stacks and try to figure out whether or not they're able to survive, or if they, as I said, they may need to spread out over several hexes so they can survive in the wilderness and not starve. One more thing that I wanted to show you is an update from the previous version. So in Imperium Romanum 2, you have limited intelligence. So in other words, I can look at this stack and I can see, that there's a lot of units there, but I can't see how many are in there unless I hover over it. But that's a problem that the Vassal module presents, is that your opponents could fly over, mouse over your stack without you knowing and see what your combat strength was before they attacked you or before you attacked them. And so in the physical game, this is what the stack would pretty much look like. You would be able to see the leader, but not be able to see the individual units. So Vassal kind of creates a problem there. So what I did was, let me take Poopy Anus off here for a second. I added masking to the counters, so now you can mask your stacks. Now again, Vassal, it's not a perfect situation, because in fact your opponent could right click and unmask, but not without everybody else knowing that the opponent did that, as well as the fact that there would be a historical record. Let's see. Unmask. You see the report that pops up there that lets you know who did the unmasking, who did the masking. So I think that should suffice to help you have your limited intelligence stacks. Okay, that's all I have to show you this time. Until next time, thank you very much.